Okay, here we go. Hello again, YouTube. Thanks for dropping by. A couple of months ago, I had my first foray into the world of YouTube, and I think one of my first offerings that was a hearthside chat about some of my favorite bladed tools from back in the years. And it occurred to me, I think, during the making, that there was a central theme to my favorite axes, and the central theme was that most of my favorites were made by the O.A. Norland company out of Lewiston, Pennsylvania. And so I collected the ones that have handles on them. I still have a couple of them in a vinegar bath that are being cleaned up, a double bit cruiser or two, and a couple of, I'm not sure what they are. Recently, too, I stumbled onto Chris Killinger's channel, simply called Killinger on YouTube. I think he definitively has the ultimate collection of Norland axes and does also have the broadest stroke of content area knowledge of anybody on the internet about the Norland group, and he's been a fount of information on some of the things that I was not clear about. This little axe here has Norland on one side, and on the other side it has J.R. Mann Edge Tool Company on it. And he was able to share with me that all of the Norlands in the beginning of their production were made in the Lewiston, Pennsylvania facility of J.R. Mann Edge Tools, along with, while they were building Collinses and Plum axes at the end of their heyday. But this one was my first one. It was a gift from my grandfather on my 6th birthday. Made the women in our house absolutely crazy. The next axe that I got the following year was this Norland. And in our town we had a pawn shop on Pesach Boulevard owned by Mr. Carson. And it was not your average, ordinary, run-of-the-mill brick-and-mortar pawn shop. He was also the outfitter for scout equipment. He carried the entire line of Norland axes new. He carried drum heads and guitar strings and guitar straps and 1/4-inch and XLR cables, and tended to be a focal point for vintage stringed instruments at the time and in the area. Also, the Reynolds hardware store on the corner of US 29 and Highway 90, brick and mortar family owned hardware store, is still there today, surviving. They were also a Norland dealer. And so these first two axes, both Hudson Bay patterns, were my first two axes. And over the years, as I had occasion to collect something or my grandfather would give me something else, these became my favorites. When I was a scout, I had loaned out this little Hudson Bay hatchet to a scout friend who brought it back with a chipped edge in its mask without telling me. And so from the Reynolds hardware, I purchased this little hatchet new, and thought, well, if I ever have need to loan anything, I'll loan out this one instead of the one my grandfather gave me. And then it occurred to me, I don't have to loan out my edge tools at all. Over the years, I acquired more. I've heard it said on the internet that Norlands are the Cadillac of American axes. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say that. I have Puget Sound heads by Sager Chemical, by Joseph Mann. I have Hudson Bay patterns and Connecticut patterns by Collins. I have a couple of Kelly Perfect axes with and without bevels. Now, given none of those companies are in business today, and neither is O.A. Norland, but all of them at one point, except for Kelly, I'm not sure about Kelly, they had their own dynasty. The Collins and the Plums were eventually made in the Lewiston production facility by the Mann Edge Tool Company. So this next little axe is a camper axe in the Norland literature, and leaning over against it is the saddle cruiser. And what occurred to me when I gave some thought to my favorite axes is that these were probably my favorites because when I started having axes, they're all on, at least these three in the front were on 24-inch handles. And for a kid, that's a full-size axe. And the hatchets were well able to fit inside of a haversack or a day pack. The only axes that I'm a little unclear about, based on the literature that I was able to discern from Chris Killinger's channel, is that there are a couple that are not on their literature page from Yesteryear Tools. So let's have a look at them. On the front row are the Hudson Bay patterns, both the hatchet and the 24-inch boy's axe. The camper axe with a 24, and I actually have a hatchet that's in a vinegar bath that is this same profile but as a hatchet. And it seemed like their trend was to make a handful of packable axes. I mean, gee, if you look at their literature, most of them have the little guy paddling the canoe. Would you take a 5-pound felling axe or a log splitter on a portage on a canoe trip? No. I think I gravitated toward all of these because they had short handles, were packable weight, and the hatchets would fit easily into a day pack or your haversack kind of deal. So for the Hudson Bay pattern, there's a 24-inch boy's axe and an attendant hatchet. For the, here's the one in the middle. This is the Trailblazer. And to go with the Trailblazer and its 24-inch handle was the Saddle Cruiser as a small hatchet. This one here with the phantom bevels in the back, I have a couple of these heads waiting to be hafted. One of them says cabin axe on it. One of the ones that says cabin axe has no phantom bevels. One of the ones with phantom bevels has a more rounded pole than this one does, and one of them has a more square pole than this one does. And this one over here in the back, I'm guessing this one is the log splitter. On their literature it said it's 3.5 pounds, and I do have a 3.5 pound head that looks kind of similar to that. In fact, this new head here, this newer one, is 3.25 pounds and looks a little similar to this. This one is 5 pounds and 4 ounces. So in the Yesteryear literature, it lists the handle length for these things and the weight of the head. I'm not sure how much of that I would take to the bank. I wish I could get Chris Killinger on the phone and show him pictures and weigh these things and have him tell me what he thinks they are, because I believe Chris Killinger has the clearest picture of what these various axes are. So at a later date, when I get all my other Norland heads out of vinegar baths and put handles on them, maybe I'll make a new one. But this was the basis of my collection. I think, like Chris, I have every Norland axe that's ever been made. I do also have a couple of odd pack saws, guide saws that are red plastic that fold up, but they're not on the list. Chris is in a unique position that he has 2 Norland items that I have never seen before. One of them, which I'd like to have one, is the Norland Deep River knife that looks like it was made out of the same stamped press stock as the Ontario Old Hickory knives and many of the knives that came from that period, from that part of New York and the county. And he has a tomahawk. Not really interested in having one of those, but I think it is the rarest of the rare Norland commodities, and he has every one of them. So do yourself a favor and go check out the Killinger site and just type in, maybe a YouTube search, every genuine Norland axe ever made, and his videos will come up. And they're awesome, and he's a genuinely nice guy and willing to share his wealth of information with YouTube newbies like myself. So thanks for coming by. Next we'll see some of these things out in the woods doing axe and bushcrafty stuff. Thanks for dropping by. Bye.